After 10 years of loyalty, he still chose his ex over me. You know that feeling when your whole world just shifts? When everything you thought was solid turns out to be built on sand. Yeah, that's where I'm at right now. My name is Maya, and I need to tell you about the worst few weeks of my life. But also, maybe the best thing that ever happened to me. I know that sounds crazy, but just hear me out. So, let me take you back to where this all started. 10 years ago, my boyfriend Daniel had this girlfriend. Her name was Claire, and honestly, they were that couple. You know the type, the ones that make you simultaneously want to vomit and get married at the same time. Everyone thought they were perfect together. I was friends with both of them back then. Just friends. Daniel and I met in college, and Claire was this vibrant, beautiful person who lit up every room she walked into. When Daniel proposed after dating for 3 years, I was genuinely happy for them. I helped Claire pick out bridesmaid dresses. I went to the bridal showers. I was there. And then their wedding day came. Claire didn't show up. No phone call. No text. No note left behind. Nothing. She just vanished into thin air. Daniel was standing at that altar in his tux, and she never walked down the aisle. I'll never forget the look on his face. This mixture of confusion, devastation, and complete disbelief. It was like watching someone's soul break in real time. The weeks after were brutal. Daniel completely fell apart. I mean, who wouldn't? The woman he loved, the woman he was supposed to spend his life with, just disappeared without a word. He couldn't eat, could barely sleep, spent most days staring at his phone, hoping she'd call with some explanation. I stayed with him through all of it, not because I had feelings for him, at least not at first, but because he was my friend and he was drowning. I couldn't just walk away and let him spiral alone. I brought him food he wouldn't eat. I sat with him through the silence. I listened when he needed to talk and just existed when he couldn't find words. Slowly, things changed between us. It wasn't some dramatic moment or grand gesture. It was quiet, gradual. We started spending all our time together, and somewhere in those late-night conversations and shared grief, we fell in love. Or at least I thought we did. About a year after Claire disappeared, Daniel and I started dating officially. And for the past 4 years, we've built what I thought was a real relationship. We moved in together. We talked about marriage, kids, the whole future. Last Christmas, he gave me this beautiful promise ring and said he wanted us to have our happy ending. I believed him. God, I really believed him. But 3 nights ago, everything changed. Daniel was acting weird all day. Like really weird. Distracted, constantly checking his phone, forgetting things mid-conversation. We had plans for dinner, but he kept spacing out, staring at nothing. It was like he wasn't even there with me. Finally, I asked him, "Babe, what's going on? You've been off all day." He snapped back to reality, gave me this forced smile and said, "Nothing, I'm fine." But I knew. You know when you just know something's wrong. I had this sinking feeling in my stomach. Is this about Claire being back in town? I asked quietly. His whole body went rigid. How did you? My mom mentioned it. She saw her at the grocery store. Daniel's jaw clenched. I don't want to talk about her, he said, and his tone was sharp. He'd never talked to me like that before. Never. I felt tears stinging my eyes. Do you still love me? I whispered. His expression softened immediately. He pulled me into his arms and said, "Of course I do. I love you so much." But even as he held me, even as he said those words, I knew something had shifted. I could feel it in the way he held me, like he was holding on to something that was already slipping away. The next night was supposed to be our anniversary. For years together, I had it all planned out. Our favorite restaurant, his favorite wine, a gift I'd been working on for weeks. I got there early, excited and nervous. I ordered the wine, put his gift on the table, sat there waiting, and waiting, and waiting. 2 hours passed. I kept checking my phone, terrified something had happened to him. Was he hurt? In an accident? Every worst case scenario ran through my mind. After 4 hours, asterisk 4 hours, asterisk, I finally got a text. Can't make it. Something came up. That's it. 8 words. No apology. No explanation. No phone call. But I knew exactly where he was. I don't know what possessed me, but I got in my car and drove to Lincoln Park. It's this place where the 3 of us used to hang out in college, Daniel, Claire, and me. There's this bench by the lake where we'd sit for hours, talking about everything and nothing. And there they were, Daniel and Claire, sitting on our bench. The way he was looking at her. I'd never seen him look at me like that. Not once in 4 years. His eyes were so focused, so present in a way he never was with me. Like she was the only person in the entire world. I should have left. Should have gotten back in my car and driven away. But I couldn't move. I hid behind some trees like a total creep and listened to their conversation. I can't believe you're really here, Daniel said, and his voice was shaking. I'm so sorry, Claire said softly. For everything. For disappearing like that. Why did you leave? The pain in his voice was raw, fresh, like it had just happened yesterday instead of 10 years ago. Claire took his hand. Everything was moving so fast back then. Everyone expected us to get married, and I panicked. I kept telling myself I was ready, but I wasn't. So I ran. It was the biggest mistake of my life. She brought his hand to her lips and kissed it gently. But I never stopped thinking about you, Daniel. Not for a single day. Daniel closed his eyes, and I watched a tear roll down his cheek. What about Maya? Claire asked, looking at him directly. Do you love her? The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. I don't know, he finally said. I thought I did, but seeing you again, I'm not sure of anything anymore. Those words hit me like a physical blow. I don't know. After 4 years together, after promises and plans and that ring on my finger, he didn't know. Is there still a chance for us? Claire asked quietly. I couldn't listen anymore. I stepped out from behind the trees and walked straight up to them. Daniel's eyes went wide when he saw me. I pulled off the promise ring he'd given me, the one I'd worn every single day for the past year, and dropped it into his hand. Maya, wait, he started, but I just turned and walked away. Part of me was desperately hoping he'd come after me, that he'd stop me and tell me it was all a misunderstanding, that I was the one he wanted. He didn't follow. That told me everything I needed to know. I drove home in complete silence. No music, no podcasts, just me and my thoughts and the crushing weight of what had just happened. Daniel didn't come home that night, or the next night, or the night after that. So I did what he never had the courage to do when Claire left him. I packed up all his stuff, put it in boxes by the door, and changed the locks. I deleted his number. I blocked him on everything. I was done waiting around for someone to decide if I was worth choosing. 6 days later, there was a knock on my door. Through the peephole, I could see Daniel standing in the hallway. He looked terrible, hair a mess, eyes bloodshot, still clutching that promise ring in his hand. Maya, please, he called through the door. Can we talk? I know I don't deserve it, but please, just let me explain. I stood there with my hand on the doorknob, my heart pounding. Part of me wanted to throw the door open. Part of me still loved him despite everything. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Claire. Please hear him out. There's something you need to know. Something we never told you. I stared at that message for a long moment. What could they possibly have kept from me? What secret could justify any of this? Against my better judgment, I unlocked the door and opened it just a crack. Daniel looked even worse up close, like he hadn't slept or showered in days. Thank you, he breathed. Thank you for opening the door. Claire texted me, I said flatly. Said there's something I should know. All the color drained from Daniel's face. Not just pale, asterisk white star, like someone had literally drained the blood from his body. He stumbled backward, catching himself against the wall. Oh God, he whispered. What is it? I demanded. What didn't you tell me? He couldn't even look at me. We need to sit down. It's complicated, and I should have told you years ago. I let him inside, though every instinct screamed at me not to. We went to the living room, but I deliberately sat in the chair by the window, far away from him. I wasn't going to make this easy. Daniel sat on the edge of the couch, still holding that ring, his hand shaking. The silence stretched on so long I could hear the clock ticking in the kitchen. Finally, he spoke, and his voice was rough with unshed tears. Claire didn't leave because of cold feet. I waited. 3 weeks before the wedding, she found out her mom had early onset Alzheimer's. Her dad had been hiding how bad it was for months. During the final dress fitting, Claire's mom didn't recognize her, asked her who she was and why she was in their house. Claire's dad finally had to admit that her mom had been getting worse for over a year. I felt something shift inside me, but I stayed quiet. Claire's dad begged her not to tell anyone. He was embarrassed, thought he could handle it alone. But Claire's mom was deteriorating fast, and Claire was supposed to move 4 states away with me for my new job. We'd already signed the lease, already planned everything. Daniel's voice cracked. Her mom was dying, Maya, forgetting everyone she loved, and Claire couldn't leave her. But she also couldn't choose between me and her dying mother. So she just ran. She didn't know how to break my heart when hers was already breaking. I sat there, trying to process what he was saying. This completely changed the story I'd been telling myself for 4 years. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, and my voice came out harsher than I intended. He looked down at his hands. I found out 7 months ago. Claire's dad had a stroke, and she finally reached out to explain everything, to apologize. 7 months. I repeated, "You've known for 7 months." I didn't think it mattered, he said quickly. Claire was gone. We were building something real. I thought I could just not tell you and it would be fine. But it wasn't fine, I said. It affected everything, didn't it? He nodded slowly. Every single day since I found out. Knowing she didn't leave because she stopped loving me. Knowing she left because she was drowning and couldn't ask for help. Have you been talking to her? I asked. This whole time. Another pause that felt like an eternity. A few emails, he admitted, about her mom's condition, her dad's recovery, just checking in. Nothing romantic, I swear, but you've been emotionally involved with her for 7 months while promising me a future. He didn't deny it. I stood up. You need to leave. Maya, please. Take your things and go. I need time to think. For a moment, I thought he might argue, but eventually he stood, grabbed a box of his stuff, and left. After he was gone, I just sat there in the silence of my apartment. The clock kept ticking. The fridge hummed. Cars passed outside, and I realized I didn't even know who I was angry at anymore. Claire for leaving? Daniel for lying? Myself for not seeing it sooner? I called my best friend Emma around midnight. She answered on the second ring, immediately worried. What happened? I told her everything. The anniversary dinner he missed, finding them at the park, the secret about Claire's mom, all of it. When I finished, Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that hit me like a truck. Maybe you loved saving Daniel more than you loved him. I wanted to argue with her, defend myself, but deep down I knew she was right. I had spent 4 years trying to be enough for someone who was never fully present, trying to win love that I should never have had to compete for. You deserve better than this, Emma said gently. You deserve someone who chooses you without hesitation. We talked until almost 2 in the morning. When I finally hung up, I was exhausted but somehow clearer than I had been in days. The next morning, I texted Claire. We need to talk. Face to face. Just us. She agreed immediately to meet me at a coffee shop downtown that afternoon. I spent all morning pacing my apartment, rehearsing what I'd say, practicing in the bathroom mirror like I was preparing for a presentation. But when I saw her walk into that coffee shop, all my prepared words evaporated. Claire looked exhausted, older than the carefree college girl I remembered from Daniel's social media photos. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled into a messy bun. She looked like someone who'd been carrying the weight of the world. We sat down across from each other, and for a moment, neither of us knew what to say. "Thank you for meeting me," she finally said. "And I'm sorry about that text last night. It was cruel to drop that bomb on you without warning." I nodded. I wanted to talk because I need to understand. All of it. Over the next 3 hours, Claire told me her story. About watching her mom forget her own daughter. About quitting her job and giving up her entire life to become a full-time caregiver. About her dad's pride preventing them from getting help. About her mom dying 4 months ago, leaving Claire with nothing but grief and regret. "I came back to give Daniel closure," she said, "to finally explain why I left. But when I saw him the other night, all those old feelings came back. I panicked and told him I wanted to try again. But I don't even know if that's true or if I'm just lonely and grasping at something familiar." She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Daniel talked about you that night. He said you were kind and patient, that you helped him heal. I could tell he cared about you, but I could also tell he never fully let me go. And that's not fair to you." When we finally said goodbye outside that coffee shop, I realized Claire wasn't the villain I'd needed her to be. She was just a person who made an impossible choice and handled it badly. We were all just people, fumbling through situations too complicated for simple answers. That night, Emma came over with Thai food and didn't ask any questions. We just ate and watched a terrible action movie, and I tried not to think about the mess my life had become. For the next 3 days, I ignored Daniel's texts. On the 4th day, I finally agreed to meet him. I told him to meet me at the park, the same bench where everything had fallen apart. When I got there, he was already sitting there looking nervous and wrecked. "Did you talk to Claire?" I asked, skipping any greeting. "She told me," he said quietly. "Do you still love her?" He struggled to answer, and that struggle told me everything. "I don't know what I feel," he finally admitted. "Seeing her brought back all this pain and love from before. But being with you has been safe. Comfortable. Comfortable." That word hit me like a slap. "I don't want to be someone's comfortable option," I said, my voice steady despite my breaking heart. "I deserve someone who knows they want me." Without hesitation. Daniel looked devastated, but he didn't argue because he knew I was right. "I think we need a real break," I said. "Not just you staying at a friend's place for a few days. I need time to figure out what I want. And you need to figure out your feelings without me waiting in the wings." "Are we breaking up?" he asked, his voice small. "I don't know yet," I said honestly. "But I do know I can't keep waiting around while you decide if I'm enough for you." We agreed he'd stay with his friend Marcus for 3 weeks. No contact. No texts, no calls, no running into each other on purpose. As we stood to leave, he tried to hug me goodbye. I shook my head. If he touched me, I'd cave on everything. I drove home in silence, turned off my phone, and just sat with the weight of what I'd done. Emma showed up an hour later with champagne and ice cream, even though I hadn't called her. She always knew when I needed her. The next few weeks were hell. I was a mess at work. Forgot entire sections of a client presentation. Zoned out in the middle of meetings. My boss, Helen, this no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd been through her own divorce, finally cornered me in the break room. "What's going on with you?" she asked bluntly. "You've been like a zombie for days." I tried to brush it off, but Helen wouldn't let me. So I told her everything. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she told me about her first marriage to a man who was still in love with his ex. I spent 5 years making his favorite meals, supporting his career, being patient while he worked through things, Helen said. But I was competing with a ghost. Someone who existed only in his perfect memory. I could never win. She looked me dead in the eye. "The kindest thing you can do for yourself is walk away. Let Daniel figure out his mess without you waiting around like some backup option." Her words stung because they were true. You deserve someone who chooses you first, she said, not someone who only appreciates you after losing everyone else. I went back to my desk feeling raw but lighter, like someone had finally given me permission to put myself first. 3 weeks after our break started, Marcus, Daniel's friend, texted asking if we could meet for coffee. I was surprised. Marcus had been Daniel's friend long before I came into the picture, but I agreed to meet him the next day. When I got to the cafe, Marcus was already there, looking uncomfortable. After we got our coffee, he didn't waste time with small talk. Daniel's a mess, he said. He's not eating, barely sleeping, just staring at his phone all day, not knowing who to call. I nodded, waiting. I'm mad at him, Marcus continued. I've watched him waste years of his life, never fully committing to anyone. He's terrified of making the wrong choice and ending up alone. So he never chooses anything honestly. Marcus looked at me seriously. You deserve better than being someone's safety net. Even if Daniel doesn't see it that way, that's what's happening. Does he still love Claire? I asked quietly. Marcus sighed and ran his hand over his face. I think he still loves her. But I also think he has real feelings for you that got tangled up with gratitude and fear of being alone. Before I could respond, Marcus added, he needs to figure out what he actually wants, not what feels safe or what he thinks he should want. We talked for another hour. When we finally said goodbye, Marcus hugged me and told me to take care of myself, no matter what Daniel did. That night, my phone rang. Claire's name appeared on the screen. My heart raced. We hadn't spoken since that coffee shop meeting weeks ago. Hello. Maya, I'm sorry to call out of the blue, she said quickly, like she was afraid I'd hang up. But I'm leaving in 3 days. Moving back to my mom's hometown. Starting over. Okay, I said slowly. I wanted to meet one more time before I go. There's something about my last conversation with Daniel that you should know. Despite not wanting to hear it, I agreed to meet her the next morning. We met at a different coffee shop, one without history. Claire looked exhausted but determined. After we ordered, she took a deep breath and started talking. Daniel came to my dad's house 2 days ago. He said he'd been thinking about everything and realized he's been unfair to both of us by not being honest about his feelings. I stayed quiet, letting her continue. He told me he never stopped loving me, but he's also built something real with you, and he's terrified of making the wrong choice and hurting someone. Claire's eyes filled with tears. I told him I'm leaving, that I won't come back to the city. I told him he needs to make his decision about your relationship based on what he actually feels for you, not by comparing it to what we had. She reached across the table and touched my hand. I'm truly sorry for the role I played in all this. You were there for Daniel during his darkest time. You've been good to him. And whatever happens between you two, don't let this make you doubt your worth. We talked for another hour. When we finally stood to leave, Claire hugged me tightly. Thank you, she whispered, for meeting with me, for not hating me. I don't hate you, I said honestly. I just hate that it took all this pain for everyone to be honest. I watched her walk to her car and drive away, knowing I'd probably never see her again. The next few days I called in sick to work. I just stayed home, lying on my couch, thinking about my relationship with Daniel in a way I never had before. I started seeing patterns I'd missed. How he'd zone out in the middle of conversations. How he never talked about his deepest feelings about anything. How I was always the one planning our future while he just nodded along. I told myself he just needed time to trust again after Claire hurt him. But maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe he just didn't want to be fully present with me. I picked up my phone and texted Daniel, we need to talk. One last time. Tomorrow at the park. He responded immediately, yes. What time? We agreed on 2 o'clock. I barely slept that night. When I got to the park the next afternoon, Daniel was already there, sitting on that same bench. He jumped up when he saw me, looking nervous and hopeful. I didn't let him start with apologies. Claire told me she's leaving, That she told you to make your decision about us based on what you actually feel, not by comparison. Daniel nodded slowly. So I'm going to ask you directly, do you still love her? He struggled to answer, his face showing the internal war he was fighting. I think I'll always have feelings for her, he finally said. What we had before, it was real, and seeing her again brought all of that back. But these 4 years with you have been good, comfortable, safe. There was that word again. Comfortable. I don't want to be your comfortable option, I said, my voice clear and steady. I deserve someone who knows they want me, without hesitation, without having to lose everyone else first to realize what they had. Daniel looked heartbroken, but he didn't deny what I was saying. I think we need to end this, I said. Not take a break. Actually end it. Maya, you need to figure out who you are without being in a relationship. You went from your broken engagement with Claire straight into leaning on me for support, then straight into dating me. You've never dealt with your fear of being alone. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it, because he knew I was right. We spent the next hour talking about practical things, the apartment, our shared furniture, all the details of untangling 4 years of life together. Daniel offered to move out so I could stay in the apartment. I was surprised by his generosity, but also sad that we'd reached this point. That weekend, Emma came over to help me pack up Daniel's remaining things. She brought trash bags and packing tape and her no-nonsense attitude, which I desperately needed. As we boxed up his clothes and toiletries, Emma told me she was proud of me. For what? I asked. For choosing yourself. For not settling for someone who only wanted you halfway. In one of the bedroom drawers, I found the promise ring Daniel had given me. I held it up to the light, remembering how happy I'd been when he gave it to me. Are you keeping it? Emma asked. I shook my head and dropped it in the box with his other belongings. That ring represented a future that was never real. The following Monday, I called the therapist number on my insurance card and made an appointment for later that week. Sitting in that small office, filling out mental health forms, I felt like I was finally taking control of my life. The therapist listened to my story without interrupting. Then she asked questions that made me see things differently. Over the next several sessions, she helped me understand that I'd been trying to earn Daniel's love by being perfect and helpful. But real love doesn't require constant proving. You changed yourself to fit what you thought he needed, she said during one session, instead of being yourself and seeing if that was enough. It was hard to hear, but she was right. 2 weeks later, Daniel texted that he'd found an apartment across town and was ready to move his stuff. We met at my place one last time. He looked different, lighter somehow, like he was finally dealing with reality instead of running from it. I started seeing a therapist, he told me as we loaded boxes into his car, working through my abandonment issues and why I've never been fully present in relationships. I'm glad, I said, and I meant it. After multiple trips up and down the stairs, all his stuff was finally in his car. He handed back the apartment key I'd given him years ago. We stood in the parking lot, neither of us sure how to say goodbye to 4 years of life together. Thank you, he said quietly, for everything, for seeing me when I was broken, for calling me out when I was being unfair. I'm sorry I couldn't be what you deserved. I hope you find peace, I said. Really? He got in his car and drove away. I watched until he turned the corner, then went back upstairs to my apartment, just my apartment now. A month later, I was scrolling through social media when I got a message request from someone named Jessica Turner. I almost deleted it, but something made me accept it. The message said, *Hi Maya, I'm Claire's younger sister. Claire wanted me to reach out and let you know she's doing well in her new place. She mentions you sometimes, says you handled everything with more grace than she deserved. I stared at the message, surprised. Then I typed back that I was glad Claire was okay. Jessica responded quickly, asking if I wanted to get lunch sometime. We met the following weekend at a casual cafe near my apartment. Jessica looked like a younger version of Claire, which was startling. Over lunch, she told me more about their mom's illness and how their family had fallen apart. Claire basically sacrificed everything for our mom, Jessica said, and I was too young to help. I felt guilty about that ever since. She told me about visiting their house and seeing how bad things had gotten, how their dad had refused help because of pride. I keep wondering what might have been different if our family had just been honest about needing help, Jessica said quietly. Hearing her perspective changed something in me. I started seeing the whole situation with more compassion, not excusing anyone's choices, but understanding how complicated it all was. We exchanged numbers and promised to keep in touch. 3 months after Daniel left, I woke up in my apartment on a Saturday morning and realized something had shifted. I'd gotten a promotion at work with a significant raise. I was going to therapy twice a month and actually dealing with my issues. I'd become closer with Helen at work, who'd turned into more of a mentor than just a colleague. And I'd started dating someone new. His name was Ryan, and I met him at a co-worker's party. He was different from Daniel in every way. He asked questions and actually listened to the answers. He was present in conversations instead of always seeming distracted. When Ryan asked about my past relationships, I told him the truth. I didn't make myself the victim or the hero. I just told him what happened and what I learned. He shared his own story about a difficult relationship where his ex had cheated. We were both honest about our baggage without pretending we were over everything. The best part? He didn't try to fix my story or tell me what I should have done differently. He just listened and said he understood why I made the choices I did. For months after everything fell apart, I was on the phone with Emma, discussing holiday plans. "Are you happy?" she asked me directly. I thought about it. Yeah, but not in some fairy tale way. It's a quiet, grounded kind of happiness. Like I'm finally living my actual life instead of the life I thought I should want. "That's the best kind," Emma said warmly. The following week, I got a handwritten letter in a pale blue envelope. It was from Jessica. She wrote that Claire's support group for Alzheimer's caregivers had helped dozens of families. That Claire had found meaning in her new life and was actually doing well. "Sophie wanted you to know that your grace during that difficult time meant more than you realize," Jessica wrote. "Thank you for being kind to my sister when you had every reason not to be." I read it twice, then put it on my fridge with a magnet. A reminder that people are complicated and messy, and grace is always worth offering even when it's hard. Around the holidays, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Daniel. Asterisk, "I wanted you to know I'm doing well. Been single for 6 months now, focusing on therapy and actually dealing with my issues. Thank you for our time together. It meant more than I probably showed. Asterisk." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed, "Asterisk, I'm glad you're finding peace. Take care of yourself. Asterisk." That was it. No long conversation. No rekindling. Just 2 people acknowledging their shared past and moving forward separately. After 2 months with Ryan, I mentioned to my therapist how different everything felt. "He texts me every morning," I said. "He makes plans a week in advance. He calls when he says he will. It feels almost too consistent." My therapist smiled. "You're experiencing what it's like to be someone's first choice, not their backup or comfort zone." Her words hit hard because she was right. With Daniel, I'd always felt like I was competing with a ghost, always wondering if I was enough. With Ryan, there was no competition. No doubt. He just showed up. 7 months after everything changed, I was sitting in my apartment on a Saturday morning, drinking coffee and looking at my new surroundings. My promotion at work had increased both my salary and my responsibilities. Therapy kept me grounded. My relationships with Helen and Jessica had grown into real friendships. And Ryan treated me the way I'd always deserved but never understood I could have. I thought about Daniel sometimes. Wondered how he was doing, if he'd figured out his issues, if he was happy, but mostly I thought about myself, about how leaving him, even when it hurt, taught me to choose myself when it's hard and scary. about how I'd learned what I don't want in a relationship, just as much as what I do want. Life wasn't perfect. I still had hard days. Days when I felt lonely or uncertain. But sitting there in my apartment, drinking my coffee, I realized something important. This life was mine, not someone else's idea of what my life should be. Not a compromise or backup plan, just mine. And that was enough.